It says Parshat Emor. It's in Sefer Yosef. Why? Question is why is it repeated? Other things are repeated also. This is a repetition of the same. What's the same as that? The Aleph oil? Exactly the same wording in today's Parsha and in Parshat Emor. And this is a comparison. So sometimes it's the very same, and sometimes one or two words different, but it's practically the same thing.
This is in Vayikra.
Exactly the same. Question is why is it repeated?
Wants to compare the one for Manova, what it says in our Parsha, and then this is in Vayikra, where it tells again.
Okay, we'll get to that sheet soon. I just wanted to get it into your hands. Can you remind me, what was the topic of last week's Parsha?
Building of the Mishkan.
Okay, close, but we're going to be a little bit more accurate. It's very, very close.
Construction of
The
the
Shulchan
Mishkan.
and the Noah.
Wait, so I can't hear you. You can speak a little. Okay, so the goal was to build a Mishkan. The commandment was to build a Mishkan, right? So before you build it, hey, you got to get the materials. You know, like today, it's very hard to get materials, for people who are building things, right? But anyway, you had to get the materials, and it wasn't necessarily hard. I mean, there was an abundance, believe it or not, there was an abundance of the materials. We took a lot of wealth out of Mitzrayim, and according to tradition, Yaakov took down some, of the acacia wood. Thank you. So we had that. But we had to get it from. We had to ask the people to donate. It should be donated with to have what? Because before we left Mitzrayim, we demanded compensation and gifts from the Egyptians. We left Egypt with a lot of wealth. Hashem already told this to Abraham that it was going to happen. Hashem told Moshe at the burning bush it was going to happen. And then he told Moshe to command it and to make sure it happens just before we leave Egypt.
And how many days did Bnei Israel have to? They left Mitzrayim in a day.
So they weren't billionaires. They were only a few millionaires.
No, they didn't have enough time even to get it.
All right. Anyway, whatever they got in Egypt, then at the sea, at Yam Suf, after Hashem drowned the chariot, it appears that, I think we may have discussed this a drop last week, but that obviously Bnei Yisrael were still very frightened. Why were they frightened? Well, think of what happened last week, or not last week, a few weeks ago, in Beshalach. We left Egypt. And here we thought, finally, we're out of here. Paro said, get up and get out of here. I don't want you anymore. And then all of a sudden, we're caught between the mountains and the sea in front of us. And then we look around, and there's dust being kicked up, and we take out our binoculars, and and my goodness, they're after us again, right? So then, even after we passed through the split sea. And we saw the Egyptian chariots, going into the sea and everything, but then we didn't see what happened. We saw them and we didn't see them. So
they drowned.
I know. So we have 20/20 hindsight for sure, and maybe. But why? Why was that necessary? Why just not leave them in the bottom of the sea? So right. So
after they drowned, they couldn't have crossed the sea with the gold and silver and everything.
What's that?
After the Egyptian drowned with the chariots and everything, how could they cross the sea and have gold and silver and all that?
Whatever they had, we had animals with us, everything. A lot of things crossed the sea. It wasn't just us. We left with a lot of livestock, and and wealth was carried. And then when we were paranoid. We were just slaves. A week ago, we were officially slaves. Our minds didn't change that fast. And we're worried about it. All of a sudden, like the master showed up in the desert with this chariots. We're afraid that maybe they're going to come out of the sea even. So Hashem had the sea spit up the Egyptians, and a lot of wealth came up. That's why we did talk about this last week when it says after the Az Yashir in Parshas Beshalach, it says Vayasa Moshe et ha'am, that Moshe, caused the nation to travel, because guess what? We didn't want to leave yet. It was all free, and there was still plenty of stuff on the shores. We wanted to take even more and more, but we got a lot of wealth. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of wealth that we left with Egypt and added to it even more at the sea. So we had a lot of things with us. All right. So last year,
they need specific ones.
Yes,
They needed specific ones.
so that's your one.
so listen, Hashem had told Moshe at the gold and silver were steady items, and chariots would be decked with a lot of items, and maybe warriors wore certain items that were very valuable. And Hashem had told Moshe, it's very interesting because it's not repeated, but Hashem had told Moshe at the burning bush that you'll also demand clothing for your children. So yeah, that was one of the things Hashem told. Take a look, chapter 3. Take a look, chapter 3, Sefer Shmos, chapter 3, Gimel. Somewhere about 304. Let's see. Yeah, 306. Pasuk 22. Kafbet. V'sha'ala isha mishechenta umigarat beta kleches v'chazahav usmalot. That the woman will ask from her neighbor and for those associated with her house vessels of silver, vessels of gold, and clothing. V'samtem al b'nechem v'abinotechem v'nitzaltem et Mitzrayim. You'll place these on your children, on your sons, and you do it. Not only that, but they got fabric also.
Okay, good.
They got fabric too. By the way.
Okay, so now we have this.
By the way. Why was it so important to tell Moshe to take clothing? If you have enough silver and gold, you really don't have to worry about the clothing if you can find it.
Because
If you can find a department store around.
After you cross the sea.
They didn't have stores with the midbar.
But it's interesting. It's not repeated.
Wait a minute. Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
But if you're going to all this, the midbar, hold on a second. The Mishkan.
I'm not going anyplace, don't worry.
Yeah, the Mishkan is a response to what? Why did we?
Hold that question.
So the
Okay,
Egel
no,
has a house.
but wait a minute, they were supposed to go directly to Eretz Yisrael, right? That was the chesh to begin with.
Well, at least within 2 years.
Okay, fine. After Mamad Har Sinai, they're going into the land of Israel.
Right.
So it's possible they wouldn't have whatever's growing and stuff to be able to do the materials that you have to weave and to do all that type of thing. So it takes time, so you need shmatis. You need clothing. Okay? That I am.
Well, surely in the end, we didn't need anything. We just needed the original outfit. Maybe a Shabbos change, because one of the miracles is that the clothes, not only did they not wear out, but they actually grew with people.
I mean, they didn't get dirty.
Oh, it's just
Right. Dry cleaning, always free dry cleaning, right?
I'm telling you,
So,
but why?
You didn't need a dry cleaning.
Yeah.
Because this week, then I have my real question. Is why did we need the Mishkan?
okay, I'm gonna believe it. That's actually on my agenda for today, but just not right now.
I can answer you.
But I'm just going to tell you, since we're talking about this clothing here, which could have been one of the sources of fabric that was needed, but we're in the middle of the conversation here at the bush. When Hashem starts talking to Moshe, and first of all reassures him that he's safe there, he's not going to die because he's having some kind of vision, communication with God. But he tells Moshe that now's the time to come make good on the promise made to the Avot, and to get the Jews back into Israel. And that Moshe's the man. He's the one Hashem's picking. And Moshe says,
Speak very
multiple times he finds reasons that he's not really the right person. That he thinks he knows better than God. He's not the right person.
So what's
And so you know, this is just my own opinion, so don't worry, I'm not pushing it too much, but the clothing is not repeated again. And when we actually leave Mitzrayim, and before we leave Mitzrayim, it doesn't say Hashem reminds Moshe we have to take the clothing.
doesn't
It
it?
does say, it says, I think, take a look. I think it's the Perek Yud Aleph, chapter 11.
How come people don't focus on before you come?
Okay, page 346. So page 346, it says, what's up? Hashem says to Moshe, please speak in the ears of the people. And that a man should ask from his neighbor, acquaintance, and the women from her acquaintance, vessels of silver and vessels of gold. So it doesn't make a reference to the clothing again.
Why does he have
Yeah.
to repeat it?
But it repeated the gold and the silver.
Why?
It did repeat the gold and the
Yeah,
silver,
but
because
it wasn't.
now it comes time to actually, the other time God spoke to Moshe a year ago, now he's telling him.
Okay, so now
But-
we know where they got the gold and silver.
Okay, good. Okay, and
Because it says-
probably, and Hashem said to Moshe at the sneh, we have to believe it. Hashem said they're going to come out with clothing for the children also. So that probably happened too. But I wanted, why did Moshe bring that up? Why did Hashem bring it up at the sneh? So my theory is that, look, he had this reluctant Moshe. Hashem knows that Moshe is the perfect and the only real candidate to be the Moshe Rabbeinu, to bring us out, to be the conduit for Torah. Hashem knows it's right. Moshe doesn't know it's right. Hashem knows it's right. So if Hashem tries to touch on a soft spot, tell me some of the things that were most important to Moshe in his lifetime. And think of what you put on the top of the list, maybe. At least among the top three things. That's all. What do you say?
Saving Bnei Israel, that they shouldn't walk so hard. He always went to Paro to get them out of the town.
Well, okay, but that's when he's 80 years old already.
Okay.
We know Moshe even before he was 80 years old.
Not
But those who are
much
at 80, you can start another job, just like Moshe did.
Maybe talk between the Jews, like on Torah type of a thing.
That he was
That was
And
even
the
later.
unity of the Jews,
unity.
because he killed somebody, that's how come he had to run away.
Okay.
Yes.
Was it Marilyn or Sarah? I heard a voice coming from over there.
The boy's own.
Getting the Torah and teaching it to the Jewish people.
So before all of that, I'm going to suggest that one of the earliest things you know about Moshe, Harold,
Was in need.
yeah, a man of justice, care for others, a man of justice.
Yes.
So I think that Hashem was touching his soft button. He says, Moshe, you know how despicable the Egyptians were to the children. You know, they threw children into the sea. And, now you have a chance to right this wrong. You have a chance to take some type of, you can't replace life, but you take something, now you're going to bedeck the children with riches that you took out of Mitzrayim. I think it was an attempt to try to reach Moshe's source. Like, how could he say no if you're talking about the children? He still said no,
He doesn't
at
mention the
first.
children.
But the first place is on page 306. Pasuk Kaf Bet 22.
So-
But then in 11, on page 346, it doesn't repeat the clothing. You know what else is different between those two references? Let me read it to you. I'll just read it to you in English, okay? At the burning bush, Hashem says, each woman shall request from her neighbor and from the one who lives in her house silver vessels, gold
Yeah, but
vessels,
this
and
is
garments.
repeated.
And you shall put them on your sons and daughters, and you shall empty out Egypt. And then in chapter 11, it says in Pasuk Bet 2, please speak in the ears of the people. Let each man request of his fellow, and each woman for her fellow silver vessels and gold vessels. What's different?
Doesn't mention the children.
That's true, but
Doesn't have to
no,
mention
but
it.
I didn't
No
mention the children when I
clothes.
just reread the pasuk. I read the children's in the next pasuk. But yeah,
No
Harold.
clothes.
The second is directed to the men as well as the women.
Right. In the first, it only mentions the women. Doesn't mention the men. Second time mentions the men. So there's in the Medrash Socher Tov. So he brings down that if you try to picture what was happening at the time of Pharaoh's decree to kill the baby boys, you know, before they divorced and separated. But you had guards that were monitoring the situation. They saw pregnant women. They could judge. Do we have to be at this house now? No, it's a, so they hear you're having morning sickness or whatever, but they know they have months ahead. But they're patrolling the sea. So we don't know how many other women hid their babies, like Moshe's mother hid him, for 3 months. Probably other people were. And what the Medrash Socher Tov says is that women had jewelry. Women like to have jewelry, right? Even back then. So they would bribe the Egyptians not to either squeal or not, if they're the officers, not to take the children. They bribe them. And Hashem basically is saying that this money that any decent human being, every human being is created in the image of God, that people should take money for saving an innocent life, can't be. That money has to come out of Egypt. And that's why Hashem wanted the money out more than B'nai Yisrael. In the Medrash, there are opinions that, why did Hashem say, please speak to B'nai Yisrael? And Rashi interprets it as a double please. Please speak to B'nai Yisrael, and please ask them to take this money. Since when you have to ask people to take money, especially you could rationalize it's coming to you all those years you worked without a salary. So that Hashem understood that the most important thing was freedom. We wanted to get out. We don't want to take the extra time. But I should have said, you got to do it. You got to take this out.
But did God tell him to take the gold and silver in order to build the Beit HaMikdash?
Doesn't say that.
Well, otherwise, how did they get all the gold and money?
No, I didn't. Hashem didn't give them a reason here. Doesn't.
Okay, but what do you think was the reason?
You mean the Beit HaMikdash? You mean the Mishkan?
Okay, Mishkan.
No, it would be a bill. It's not the only thing. They didn't have to give up all their money. They're allowed to keep
No,
their
but
money.
when they got out of the Yam
Okay,
Sif, they
yeah,
didn't have
I
gold and silver.
That's
and
the
all
amazing thing about Hashem is that he can make something work in 63 different scenarios or 63,000 scenarios. He could put it all together. We can't make everything
that.
happen,
Gold and
all
silver
together.
doesn't stem from there.
That's right. That's right. Marilyn.
So what you're saying is that Hashem's main goal was to punish Egypt for its sins, and we left the jewels, the gold, etc. there. They could rebuild. They'd still be rich, and we had to take it so that they wouldn't be rich.
Maybe. I mean, the rebuilding is a different issue. Maybe they would have had to change their whole, attitude towards
But if they had
towards
money,
their economy, because their economy was agriculturally based and that was destroyed. So they would have had to change. That's true. But that's something remind me next year. Maybe we could talk about that when we're in that Pasha, Michael.
The best answer I heard why they took the gold and silver was for the sake of the Jews, that they shouldn't hate the Egyptians, because they asked, in other words, they said, let us borrow the gold and silver, and therefore, since the Egyptians gave it to them somewhat willingly, then the Jews kind of recognized it was Pharaoh who did this to them, not the Egyptians. So it was so that we wouldn't have hatred in our hearts.
If we have time at the end, which we may not, since we already did some extra things that weren't in our Pasha, so maybe we could try to find time to pursue that. But what I do want to note is that it's true that some commentators translate the word Sha'ala is to borrow,
Yeah.
but the Rashbam, strongly endorsed by Rav Soloveitchik, is if you look in Navi how it's used, it's to demand. Demand is a gift, and in fact, let's just go back. Good thing I have. Let's just look at those psukim for a moment. Yeah. In Pashas Mishpatim, we talked about different types of shomrim, different type of people who have responsibility for somebody else's property. either, someone's going on vacation and they ask you to, can you please take, my plant into you and, and watch it, maybe water it a little bit. And you're not asking your neighbor to pay you for that. But if you're an apartment watcher, you could also get, then you're a paid watcher. If you're doing it free, you're a shomer chinam, you're an unpaid watcher. And if you want to borrow something, you go to somebody and you say, I had this DVD I want to watch, but my DVD player is broken. It's been broken for 4 years now. Can I borrow yours? And you borrow it and you drop it as you unplugging it, and it breaks. You're responsible to replace it. I mean, you asked, you had permission to borrow, but you have all the responsibilities. So, if you know how you say, I heard Nachama Leibowitz said once that Hebrew, as beautiful as a language it is, it has limited words, and it's more limited in its volume of words than other languages. But the way Hebrew compensates for that is by the prepositions that it adds to a word, or even as a contraction, so that you can change a word to mean something just by the way the preposition is used. So, for example, if a borrower, the Torah says, "V'chi yish al ish me'im re'ehu." Right, me'im. That's what it with an ayin. Right, and here, for
instead of saying mira'el, they say
and here in chapter 11, where Moshe is commanded to speak to Israel, it says v'yish'alu ish me'et re'ehu.
It's the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
Yes, it is.
Just so it's not the same thing, and the word et itself, which we always say the word et, we say grammatically it's needed before a direct object. That's how we usually, technically define it. But if you look in the beginning of Pashas Lech Lecha, you'll see that there are references that sometimes Lot is going im Avraham, and sometimes he's going et Avraham. It's not the same thing.
Right.
Is that it? Just like a person, if you're borrowing something, me'im, you're borrowing it because you're not the new owner. He's the owner still, and you're borrowing somebody else's, property.
Yeah.
And then you would have to give it back at some time. But so me'im, the ayin is a strong connection. So there are times when Lot had a strong connection with Abraham, and there are times that Lot had a weaker connection with Abraham. If you're borrowing something, the Torah says im, me'im, from something that is with the owner, even though the owner is a mile away and you have his property in your house, he's still the owner of that property. He just let you take it for the time being. But eight, when you take something, me'et is a weak connection. It's not a permanent connection. And that's why it means to demand as a gift, not you're not borrowing it. It's as a gift. So that I just want to go on record on that, because otherwise it's passionate. You're lying. Just give it to you. I'll bring it back to you next week. That's lying.
It's borrowing, it's not a gift.
It was a gift. The Egyptians would, first of all, the Torah says that we found great favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, and Moshe was recognized as a big person in front of the Egyptians, and they wanted to get rid of us. Just take it all, and go. Okay. All right. That's a big introduction now. Okay. So we started out by asking what the topic was last week. So last week was the command to build a Mishkan, and in order to do that, to gather the materials, that people should voluntarily participate in the construction of the Mishkan. And after those commands, there were specifics given as to what vessels, what structures should be built. They weren't built yet last week. We were told what we need to do. There was the plans both for the materials, the fundraising, and and what it's going to look, basically what it's going to look like, what the dimensions are going to be. Now, those are all had to do with the vessels or the supports, the roof, the walls, the courtyard, the mizbeach, the altar, the menorah, etc. What else is part of the Mishkan, which was Well, what should come next? I ask you this question. What should come now this week?
The Chatzar, the courtyard.
That we did at the end of last week's parsha. Okay.
Caving, but go in? No.
I think everything. I think last week it said Lahavdil Ben was like you need to be talking about that at the parochis it didn't have the same language as because we had some individual input to the design because all the vessels even though if you said the Aaron, they meant the Aaron Kodesh, so it's not really the same, but it sounds like that it's something the same. But you're close, you're getting close to that. But I tell you what, while you think about it,
No, now you
wait,
need to,
while you think about it,
you don't have to say
I
that.
just
The closer the code.
Wait 1 second, 1 second. Now, there are 4 items discussed at the beginning of our parsha. Don't even look, don't look now, don't look. I know one person maybe looked already, but nobody else looked. Don't look, okay? Put the sheet over the chumash so you can't see. I have the 4 topics that are listed at the beginning of the parsha. I'm gonna mix them up, so I don't know which is coming up first, and you don't know which is coming up first. So I'm just gonna, I'll tell you, I'll read all of them to you, just the way I'm turning them over, okay? So here it is. Bring Aaron and sons closer. Take pure oil. Speak to garment artisans. Make priestly garments. Those are the 4 topics at the very beginning of the parsha. Which one should come first? Which means you have to figure out maybe what makes sense for last week's parsha, what makes sense out of these 4. Tell me what you think. Here, I have bring Aaron and sons closer. Where should this go? Is it at the top of the list, at the bottom, in the middle,
No, but
someplace?
last week you talked about the menorah, but you didn't talk about the oil. So the oil makes sense to be
They
the
talked about
first.
the mizbeach, but I don't hear anything about slaughtering an animal over here.
Okay, because it was just building, but you should build.
Okay,
you-
all right,
you
so
build
just
the
tell me,
menorah.
so where should I put this?
But
Bring Hakrev, bring Aaron and his sons closer. Where do we put this?
the second one,
Second, okay, so we'll put it like over here, okay.
just like the parsha.
Okay. Speak to garment artisans. Moshe has to speak to the garment artisans. Where should we put that?
Well, after you tell him.
Like give somebody else. You had one already. I only have 4 slips. So somebody else.
Number 3, maybe.
Number 3. Let's see. Okay. All right. Right. Well, Howard, you wanted the chance there?
I would put it before.
Well, we'll do it. Let's take. All right. Let's get them up. Take pure oil. Number 1, because it's logical, or because you know that.
There's no reason to bring Aaron and his sons forward if you don't have the oil to them.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's the first one according to them, which is what.
Okay, and now make priestly garments,
Yeah,
which probably
Already done?
would be the most likely.
Didn't you have already placed it down?
No, Moshe had to speak to the people who are gonna make them,
You're gonna make what?
to make the garments. So where does this go?
After he made them, he
Wait,
has.
here?
But
Top,
after,
here?
How can it be top?
but he has to make them first, and then you get.
All right, so what did you say?
You can't, that has to be after basically
You make
to make garments.
No, not necessarily.
Yes.
Since Hashem tells Moshe they have to make, like I guess you're understanding this as the make priestly garments would be a command to the artisans, but it could be a command to Moshe also.
But somebody has to make them, and then you have it accomplished.
So we don't agree.
Should be after the. No, we do agree. First they tell
We
you.
don't agree on the others either. It's
No.
okay.
After you start,
Okay.
It doesn't go like that.
No, it's after he talks to.
First of all, we're not doing it yet. This is a command, what we supposed to do.
So that's what we're talking about.
So first, he's telling him about something holy, to do something holy. And because we
Which
have-
is what?
Which is the oil, and not anybody can light this menorah.
Who would have to light the menorah, by the way?
So
Who would have to light the menorah?
Aharon and Bano.
Right.
Okay.
It's a
Now,
preference
when
with the
Aaron
Kohen
and
Gadol, but
Hannah-
it has to be a Kohen.
Right.
And by the way, just think about this for a moment. In order for the Kohen to light the menorah, what's the dress code?
Has to wear
Can I do it? Can I land in my
No,
suit?
no.
Has
So
to
he
wear
has to
the
prepare
garments.
himself. So he has to prepare himself, he has to wear special
Yes,
clothes.
garments.
Now, where is he gonna
Somebody
get
gotta
these
make
clothes?
them.
Somebody
That's
has to
right.
make these
Right, so
clothes.
they should be
So
right
Somebody
after
has
that.
to make
It's the way of
So,
clothing.
so
It's
you,
not
so
the
you want this,
order.
you want this up
No,
here?
No,
Right?
But how can he light the menorah if he doesn't have the clothes?
oh, he's not lighting yet, he's not telling him that this is what we're gonna have to do.
Yes.
And then he's telling
That's-
him who's
that's
gonna
correct.
do it.
Good
And then
point.
he's telling him
That's
they
right.
need to wear special clothes. And then he's telling him where's he gonna get these clothes? These people are gonna make these clothes for him. This is
Okay, can you
just
tell that to me
a
over again?
plan.
Because I got
This is just a
distracted. Tell
plan.
me again.
This is a plan.
Tell me again. What did you say?
You think I can repeat it?
Yeah.
He
Yes, you
can't
can.
light the menorah until he
Okay.
invites him.
So what's number one? What's number one?
The oil.
The oil.
The oil. The
Alright,
oil
just
is the
one
main
minute.
thing. Everything is happening
All right,
because of the oil.
Gene, you'll get a chance to answer the, what was that? Michael said that or Gene?
No, he's the last one.
Oh, well,
He's the
okay.
last one.
I
The
would say
last one.
take out.
All right, well, we'll take the women's view first. Let's see, okay? So we're gonna take the pure oil,
Right.
and then what?
Now, who is gonna use this? Who is gonna work with this oil? Who's gonna light it?
Yeah,
So he's giving the job
To
to
the Kohen.
Aaron and Banav, the Kohanim.
okay, let's see, okay,
Now, Aaron and Banav, the Kohanim cannot just walk from their house and light it. They
okay.
have to
Wear
be
special
not only holy as a person, but also their clothes.
Okay, what's
So
next?
they have to wear
Okay.
special clothes.
Mhm.
Now, where are they gonna get these special clothes? There's gonna have to be special people who are gonna make him those special clothes.
Okay, so which one comes
So
next?
that's the last one. This
Mean
is
this one.
the,
We're moving
this is
this
the
up here?
third, and this is the last one. Now,
Okay.
who's
All
gonna
right,
do
okay,
it?
so let's
He is
just,
going to do it.
let's look inside the Chumash, okay?
That's exactly where I want
The
that.
oil belongs to the menorah on last parsha. Because what do you have the menorah for? You've got to use the oil. Otherwise, it's going to stand there beautiful.
But you also had the shulchan with the showbreads. Why doesn't the Torah talk about making challahs?
But the shayachut could be for last week. It doesn't.
Yeah, last week, the shulchan is in last week's parsha, just like the
Should have already
menorah.
been last week, actually.
The shulchan is in last week.
Yeah,
Yes.
all the kalim are in last week.
Okay, so they just build
So,
it. Now
so,
he's
so
telling them
anything,
who's
you have,
gonna
you have,
use
you
what,
have the
when, how.
mizbeach for the incest, the ketoret, you know, so, but why is the oil the only one? But okay, but let's just see if you're right. Let's just see if you're right.
Yes.
Okay, so we start out, the kati.
Exactly right.
Okay, take pure oil. Good. So far, good. All right. Then pasuk. Then the next chapter.
That's exactly
Very
right.
well,
That's the
very
second
good.
one.
Okay, so
What was
get
that
the Kohanim to come to you,
That's right.
right? And then it says Vasita Bigdei Kodesh Laron Achicha.
Yes, that's the third one.
Okay, so it's not. It's actually, and then it says, and you should speak to the artisans, the smart people. So this would be this is the order
Yes.
in the Torah.
All right.
So now let's just.
Let's go.
Now we're going to take a break for a couple of minutes, and let's go to the sheet that you have in front of you. So I already heard. Well, let's just look at the first two lines in the sheet, okay? I'll read it for you. So I'm going to start starting. This is a comparison of this week's Parsha Tetzaveh. Are there extra sheets around here? This week's Parsha is the most right column. And then in the middle of Sefer Vayikra in Parshas Emor, we have another dealing with this.
It's a repetition.
I wouldn't argue with you this time, Alda, if you said it appears to be a repetition.
The minutes
It
came out
appears to be.
exactly the same.
But to be a total repetition would seem to like break the rules, certainly to like Rashi and others that would subscribe to his
Yeah,
thought.
it doesn't actually say
But
why
let's
is
see.
it
Okay, so let's see. First of all, there's a big giveaway here. So you see, when I set up these charts, I try to set up what's, what is or should be the same. So we see, is it the same or is it different?
Many times.
So what, one of the biggest giveaways here is that there's a blank space. So you see in our Pasha, what's the difference between our Pasha and Pasha's Emor? Okay, that's very good. I want to talk about that also. So you have a different type of introduction in Emor, the second column. That's Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying. So number one in Pasha's Emor, there's an action verb coming from Hashem and Hashem's name. So Hashem starts the conversation, and he's having the conversation to Moshe, and Moshe's name is mentioned. We don't have any traces of that pasuk in this week's parasha. It doesn't say Vayidaber Hashem, and then say the Atat Titzaver. It's like it doesn't say that, and it doesn't say Moshe's name.
But it's
So in line 2, from continuation from what?
From last week parasha. I mean, this all the things that Hashem says. Vasita, Vasita, Vasita. He's talking to Moshe, yes? To whom is Hashem talking? The whole Pasha is Vasita.
Okay. So
Now he's talking about
okay.
the
So then we could say, you could change the question. You could say, so why doesn't it say? Just start with the Yikhu Elech Hashem and Zayitzach even. What that?
It's
not so.
Okay.
Anyway, number one, we want to see there's no introduction and there's no mention of Moshe's name. We're going to come back to that. And then in the second line, where it starts off with Hashem's talking to Moshe. Yeah, we know he's Moshe from last week's parsha, but it is a different type of command now. It's very different than last week's parsha, and Chazal saw it. Our tradition tells it that it's at the start of a new parsha, but it just starts with the pronoun, and it's not the same. It's the same shoresh of command, but here it says "Ata titzaveh," you will command or should command. You might want to translate, but I don't want to confuse you. And in Vayikra and Parshas Emor, it says "Tzavet b'nei Yisrael," command.
So it's still the same.
Okay. Okay. Good. Perfect. So that if you want to say it's the same thing, we'll see. So the two things. All right. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Now that we just see this lined up, so I'm going to tell you what the Abar Binel says, and then if we have time, we'll come back and talk about why Moshe's name is not in the parsha. If we have time, I actually have 7 different reasons to share with you, 6 or 7. So we'll see. So, so number one, because these two accounts of the taking of the oil for the menorah are so similar, and I apologize I didn't give the man a chance to have a run at the list. We'll see maybe next time, what we can do. But it is so similar, and so the Abar Binel asks, why do we have this here? And
why do we have one?
In this week's parsha, why do we have the command? We weren't ready to light the menorah yet. It's not ready.
What should you later on do?
But so the Abar Binel says that the real mitzvah of lighting the menorah, that's reserved for Pashas Emor. That is, and it's introduced, formally. Hashem said to Moshe, spoke to Moshe saying, and that's the actual mitzvah. The Abar Binel says, how else can you translate Titzaveh? And what would it mean? If I say, and you will command B'nai Yisrael, what does that mean? When will you command? In the future. So the Abar Binel says that this is the way you understand in this week's parsha is Hashem is telling Moshe that coming up you're going to have to command B'nai Yisrael about lighting the menorah. So we have to get ready for it, and then to get ready for the lighting of the menorah, that has to be done by a Kohen, preferably by the Kohen Gadol, but it has to be a Kohen, not a Levi, and certainly not a Yisrael. So, but there is a dress code for the avoda, for the service that's performed in the Mishkan and in the Beit Mikdash by the Kohanim. Interestingly, I saw the question, but I didn't have a chance to read the answer. But the question, I'm not sure if it was the Rabbi Yasgur's question or I think it was somebody else's question that I was reading, but I had to stop reading. But why didn't the Levium have to wear special clothing? But it wasn't. It's only the Kohanim that had to wear special clothing.
They were just the helpers. They were not the one who
Okay,
let them in.
all right, but they were very involved. But okay, all right. So anyway, so because the Abarbanel says that we have to give understanding to what's taking place here, there will be a need to take the oil. Eventually, the time is going to come that you're going to have to give the order for the oil to be made. It's not happening now. Moshe didn't get up at the beginning of this week's Pasha and say you got to now give the oil. Hashem's telling him, this. I mean, I think you would accommodate that if you have to explain to the people why we're doing this, okay. But we're not really doing the oil now. It's just that we have to be ready to do the oil. To be ready to do the oil, we need to continue now. Last week in the Parsha, we read about the inanimate items that had to be part of the Mishkan. All the kelim, the vessels, the curtains, the support beams, etc. But now we have the next part is that there are human beings that are going to be in the Mishkan. So the Kohanim need their garments. So you have to make this special bond with Aaron and his sons, and you, Moshe, have to oversee the creating of the making of the priestly garments, which means that you're not going to make them yourself, Moshe, but you're going to speak to the Chag. So that is the order and why it's the order. Otherwise, we probably should have really started here. You could make the argument for here because we're not being commanded now to do the oil. Now, Moshe's name is not mentioned in this week's parsha. We understand why Moshe's name is not mentioned in Sefer Bereshis because Moshe wasn't born yet in Sefer Bereshis. Moshe is born near the beginning, not right at the beginning, but near to the beginning of the second book of the Torah, Shmos Exodus. In Devarim, Devarim is like is a very long address, by Moshe. So there, many of the parshas are really a direct flow one from the other. So you don't see Moshe's name mentioned as much. So you could have a parsha maybe that doesn't have Moshe's name in it, maybe because it's all he's talking. But in the Chumashim of Shmos, Vayikra, and Bamidbar, to see Moshe's name missing, this is the only parsha in those three books, only this week's parsha that does not have Moshe's name listed in it. For the clock, I want to go through some of the reasons, and then we'll take some questions.
Of last parsha where Hashem told Moshe do this
Okay,
and this and that.
but I think we could find other examples, which is really like if let's just like it.
Let's hear the answers. Let's hear the seven.
Okay.
Let's hear the answers.
Okay. So there are two very, very popular answers. I'm not sure which one is more popular than the other, but maybe the Gra's answer is not the most popular. But I'm going to say, if you look at the last two parshas of this parsha, of the Sefer, Vayakel Moshe, and then in Pekude, which comes right after, it says Asher Kukar Pi Moshe. You didn't have to. You could also connect it. Moshe, all the accounting. Take the accounting of it. So this is an anomaly right here. The Vilna Gaon says, "Do you know what the Hebrew date is today?" Yeah. Yes. What?
No, Zayin Adar was yesterday or the day before.
So I think it's the 9th of Adar, right? The 9th of Adar, which means 2 days ago was Zayin Adar.
Yes.
Zayin Adar was the
Moshe
day
was
that both
born and Moshe died.
Moshe was born and he died. And the Vilna Gaon says that since Moshe left this physical world on the 7th of Adar, and almost every year, the 7th of Adar falls out during the week that Parsha Tetzaveh is the Parsha So Hashem, already foreshadowed this absence from the physical world of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Parsha doesn't have the name.
Wow.
The second most, as far as I know anyway, the second most popular explanation is because Moshe, in his attempt to save Bnei Yisrael from total destruction, said to Hashem that if you don't forgive the people, then erase me from your book, which I guess means just get me out of the picture, And because Moshe was Moshe, and his words spoken, especially to Hashem, are super duper powerful. We shouldn't compare ourselves to Moshe, but we could say things that we can never take back and have an impact. But Moshe, especially with Moshe, since even though he meant it, in a good way, and in the end he didn't, he didn't need to call that card because Hashem agreed to forgive Bnei Yisrael, but because he said it, it still had a ripple effect, and his name's not here. Those are the two most popular answers.
Well, just
to
take
the-
the obvious
so-
as a
Now,
fact.
anybody know another one?
Yes, it's a
The second
continuation.
one was the one I know.
Okay, Sarah.
Rabbi Goldberg and Shewer this week gave one, I think, unfortunately, my memory's not good enough. I think it was the Rav, and he said that when you speak to someone without necessarily mentioning his name, it shows the closeness of Hashem to Moshe. So, because it's obvious that he's speaking to Moshe,
Yes.
but he's not mentioning his name, and it's a symbol of how close they are.
So that may, if it was Rav Soloveitchik's comment, it may have been he had a parallel thought to I think an earlier source, but it does appear. I believe the Sefer it's an abbreviation, but I think the name of the book is called Be'er Mayim Chayim, and there the author says that the fact that Moshe's name is not in the parasha is not negative. How could you like think that something negative could happen for Moshe, who was willing to sacrifice his life in order to save Bnei Yisrael? How could something negative come out of that? Even though we can answer that, based on number two popular answers I shared, but this is like he couldn't fathom them, but it's coming as to speak about the it's a high, a very positive thing about Moshe, which along the lines of the Rav is that it's like you're superseded your personal name. You're like a famous personality with a great stature that everybody's going to know about now. So that's number three. Along the same lines of being positive is that in Parshas Emor, since we don't have that introduction, it's being emphasized that Atah Titzaveh B'nai Yisrael. You know what, Moshe? Your reward is I'm going to let you play God for a mitzvah. Because you are going to be the one to give this command. So that's number three. Number four. Actually, that was number four. The Alshich says something interesting. We know about this from this concept more or less from Rashi, the famous Rashi at the beginning of Parshas B'Haloscha. At the beginning of Parshas B'Haloscha, very connected actually. Didn't think about that before. Very connected to this week's Parsha, because how does B'Haloscha, which is page 774, So Hashem speaks to Moshe saying, speak to Aaron and say to him, when you light the candles, when you cause the flames to go up, they should be, the flame should be facing like the center, the seven candles should be facing the center, one in the center and the other six facing the center. So Rashi asks, why does this parsha, which implies that the chronology wouldn't necessarily require it to be here. But what it immediately precedes this are the days of Chanukat HaMizbeach, the dedication of the Mishkan, the altar and the Mishkan. And on each day, one president, each tribe was represented and brought a special offering, even though the special offerings were all identical. And the Torah is so long, the Parsha, because it doesn't say, and this one also did the same, and this one did the same. Everybody gets the same treatment, as if they were the only one bringing this gift. Who didn't bring a gift on that day? What tribe was not represented? The Levi tribe, which means the Leviim and Kohanim were not represented. So Rashi brings down the Medrash that Aharon was disappointed. He sees the whole parade every day. He sees the whole parade, taking place with all the special gifts coming, and and he felt bad that he and his shevet, didn't have that opportunity to do that.
Aaron wasn't there when the menorah
He didn't. We're not talking about the menorah being. We're talking about the dedication of the entire, Mishkan, which focused around the Mizbeach, the altar. So the Medrash says that Aaron was chalsha da'ato. He was somewhat faint about it. Shelo haya imahem b'Chanukah, that he didn't have a role. Lo hu v'lo shifto, they didn't have a role. Why didn't they?
Aaron wasn't there in the midbar with them.
Doesn't say that he wasn't there.
So it says.
He didn't have.
How come he wasn't?
Meaning he didn't have an active role. He didn't. He was.
It says he wasn't with them.
Don't put. That's not what it means here. Doesn't mean he wasn't. Where would he be? All Jews were there. Everybody was there. It means that he didn't have a role. Imahem means he was not with them. He did not participate. And again, that im, very strong connection of im. He was not he and not his shifto. You think that all of Shevet Levi went on a 3-day cruise someplace?
Somewhere was
they were right there. They didn't participate. Okay. Accept it, don't accept it. But they were all physically in the Machane Yisrael. All Jews were present on that day. But the only tribe that was not represented in the official procession and gifts of any one of the days, that was Shevet Levi. So Hashem comes and says, Hayecha, my goodness, Ari, you got it all wrong. You have you have a special job, and the job of lighting the menorah is greater than all of them. There's more. That's the end of Rashi. There's more to say. Rambani has a very interesting point, but the Alshich here says that this was the same thing by Moshe. The truth is, whether it's 100% the same or not, I'm going to take a careful look at, and I was thinking of maybe actually using it as a Devar Torah over Shabbos, but basically, at least the Alshich says that there was some type of intervention here to prevent Moshe from feeling that way. Not that he was jealous of anybody, but just there were holy things taking place, but he wasn't doing anything directly. Yeah, he had to appoint the artisans, but he would have liked to have gotten his hands busy and do more. And Hashem comes to tell him, Moshe, this mitzvah that I'm telling you now of lighting the menorah. What's the symbolism of the light of the menorah? That's Torah. So why did he pick a why did Hashem tell Moshe, you tell them about the mitzvah of the showbreads for the shulchan, or the Torahs, the fragrances? So Hashem picked this mitzvah to let Moshe know that his role is like the greatest. It's like because he's bringing Torah to everybody, and all the mitzvahs that people will do and all the Torah that people will learn will all be actually related, back to him. So and that, by the way, is something that we should always keep in mind, because could be true. Again, we're not Moshe Rabbeinu, but we have a little slice that we can learn from here. Is that if we succeed in influencing somebody else to do something that's a mitzvah, something good, something that's a mitzvah, we actually get credit for that as well. So that could be our mission started, more. I mean, some of us have it already, but.
I still
very
don't,
more. Okay, it's exactly 12 o'clock.
okay, so why, I still don't understand why Aaron and his son were not in Chanukat HaMizbeach.
We didn't stay there one
Okay,
night.
you want
Yes,
my
he
answer?
does
You
say.
want my answer for that?
Yes,
Okay, first I'll tell you the Ramban. The Ramban says that Aaron, don't be saddened, because the day is going to come that your family is going to be the ones at the head of rededicating the holy place.
so.
When is that time? Hanukkah. At Hanukkah, that the Maccabees were Kohanim. So my own understanding of the Ramban, because obviously Aaron was not going to be alive, although his descendants would be alive. But my own understanding of what the Ramban's message is telling us is that there's a certain value of being able to wait on the sidelines until it's your time to jump in and take over. And when it came, it was very unusual, truthfully, for that Kohanim should have been the warriors. It's like, it's unusual, but they did lead the battle. And and so your patience back then in the Midbar will be well worth it, because you're going to lead something later on. So sometimes it's maybe not our time to be in the spotlight, but the time could be down the road. Okay, have a good day. If you're registered for the lunch and learn, remember it's starting upstairs soon.
Right now? No, she's still.
Those online, thanks for joining us.
You asked me, is it now?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Have
See
a
you
good-
soon. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful. I loved it. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, all this.